This is his war. Viktor's. And he spent the last 600 years exterminating my species.
Hello everyone and welcome to my channel where I cover vampires, werewolves, and all kinds of supernatural creatures. This video is going to be focused on the three elder vampires from Underworld: Viktor, Marcus, and Amelia. Betrayals and Amelia's secret that she kept hidden from the entire vampire world.
You have broken the chain and the covenant. You must be judged.
In my opinion, he was the smartest and most ruthless vampire elder. I covered his story a long time ago, but the video was only 10 minutes long and it left a lot of stuff out. He is played by one of my favorite actors, Bill Nye. No, not the science guy, this Bill Nye. He's been in so many of my favorite franchises: Underworld, Harry Potter, Pirates of the Caribbean, Hot Fuzz. Anyway, today we're talking about Viktor. He is one of 3 vampire elders that rule the vampire race in the Underworld series. We're going to take a look at how he became the most powerful elder, how he single-handedly started the war between vampires and Lycans, tried to alter vampire history, and so much more. The story of Viktor is also partially the story of Lucian and Celine, because their lives are so interconnected, which is honestly one of my favorite parts about this series.
With an offer, a reprieve from sickness and death.
Viktor's story begins roughly 1500 years ago around the 6th century. He was a successful warlord in Hungary with an army of soldiers. The first vampire, Marcus, knew this and wanted to use Viktor's army for his own means. Marcus had a brother named William, and he is the first werewolf and an uncontrollable beast. I explained this in the Amelia video, but the original werewolves cannot take human form again and are completely feral. This form of lycanthropy spreads like a zombie outbreak. They attack everything in sight, subsequently turning them. This is causing the numbers of werewolves to skyrocket. Marcus needed help to get the werewolf problem under control before it's too late. That's why he found Viktor and made him an offer: eternal life in exchange for use of his army and expertise. Of course, Viktor agreed and he was turned. Viktor then turned the rest of his army. These were the first death dealers. Amelia was turned by Marcus not too long after Viktor, and these 3 would become the vampire elders. Viktor and Amelia were the only 2 vampires ever to be turned by the first vampire, Marcus. This gave them increased strength compared to all other vampires since they were closer to the progenitor. For centuries, the vampires would continue to establish themselves and their covens, all the while trying to stop the werewolf problem. Viktor would reside in the Old World Coven. Amelia would go on to found the Eastern and Nordic Coven. Around 600 years after Viktor is turned, they finally managed to find William and capture him. This is the flashback we see in Underworld Evolution.
You must not be harmed.
I gave you my word, did I not?
An entire village has been turned into werewolves. They are much stronger than vampires, and William is the strongest of them all, with distinct white fur. Marcus wants to capture his brother in order to help him. Viktor has a different idea though: imprisonment for all time. Marcus is furious at Viktor's change of plans, but he is surrounded by Viktor's army, and Amelia sides with Viktor, so he has no choice but to agree. Viktor did stab Marcus in the back here, but to be honest, this is probably the smartest decision. Marcus wants to help his twin brother, but William cannot be controlled, and if he's allowed to run free, it could lead to the extinction of not only vampires, but humans as well. Viktor most likely would have just killed Marcus and William, if not for one thing. Probably the smartest thing that Marcus ever did was tell Viktor that since he is the first vampire, if he died, all in his line would follow. This means if Marcus were to be killed, Viktor and all the other vampires would die. Viktor probably questioned whether or not this was a lie, but when your life is on the line, it's better to play it safe. That's why even though Viktor wanted to undermine Marcus, he still had to protect him at all costs. This is also why he couldn't just outright kill William, because he had to keep Marcus under his control somehow, and he did that by keeping his twin brother imprisoned.
It's William's prison.
Around 200 years later, in the late 1300s, Viktor has a man build an elaborate prison for William to be stored in. This man is Celine's father. Viktor needed the prison to be exceptionally strong, and the location had to be kept a secret from Marcus. The prison was built under a castle owned by Viktor. The prison itself is like a metal sarcophagus, and this is kept behind a massive stone wall. The prison can only be opened with a special key that was given to Viktor. This key can be split into 2 parts. One part of the key was placed where nobody would find it, under Viktor's flesh, literally embedded in his chest. The other half of the key was given to his daughter Sonia to wear around her neck. She had no idea this necklace was a key, and neither did Marcus. He had no clue that a part of the key to his brother's cell was being flaunted right in front of him. The movie Rise of the Lycans is next in the timeline, and this takes place in 1402, around 200 years after William was captured and not too long after the prison was completed. At this point, the Vampire Council has been established by Viktor. This is a group of chosen vampires that are the most powerful in the species, besides the elders. They deal with most political matters and decide punishments for people who break the rules of the Coven. It's possible that Viktor established the council as a way to keep an eye on Viktor and Amelia when he was asleep, also making sure that the Covens abide by his strict rules even when he's not around. This brings us to the chain. I have explained this before, so I won't spend too much time on it here. At some point, it was decided that only one vampire elder would rule at a time, while the other two would hibernate in a suspended animation. Each elder rules for 100 years and then awakens the next in line. The blood memories allow the new elder to see everything that's happened in the past 100 years. Sometimes more than one vampire elder is awake, like when they captured William. I'm not sure if this was an oversight or maybe the chain hadn't been established yet. I really like the way the vampire eyes look in Rise of the Lycans. Some vampires like Selene, Viktor, and Marcus have blue eyes, whereas some vampires like Amelia and Tanis have yellow eyes. Anyway, during Rise of the Lycans, Viktor is the current ruling elder. During this 100 years, Viktor did something that would come back to haunt him centuries later. We see in Rise of the Lycans that humans are paying the vampires for protection against the werewolves, and apparently the vampires aren't doing a very good job, because the humans are complaining about their people being killed. This infuriates Viktor and he kills one of the human nobles, and it gives us an insight into the current werewolf problem. Even 200 years after William was captured, the werewolves continue to multiply and are still an issue. Viktor had some werewolves locked up in the dungeon below Castle Corvinus. One day, they found a werewolf had given birth to a human child. Viktor was about to kill the child, but had an idea. Instead of killing him, he trained the boy and he became a sort of pet for Viktor. His name was Lucian. He was the first of his kind, not a werewolf, but a Lycan. His mother was bitten by a werewolf while she was pregnant with Lucian. Somehow, his body was able to adapt the virus and he was born in human form. The difference between werewolves and Lycans is that werewolves are stuck in wolf form forever. Lycans, on the other hand, can transform at will and have much more control over themselves in wolf form. They also have increased strength while in human form.
To defeat the very first werewolves, a dangerous and infectious breed.
Viktor was so impressed by this new race, he began to create Lycans. He would do this by forcing a Lycan to transform, then having that Lycan bite human slaves purchased by Viktor. These new Lycans would be his workforce with increased strength and lifespan. They would also serve as the daylight guardians against the werewolves. We see here many Lycans chained to the wall of the castle like guard dogs. Vampires cannot feed on Lycans, so there's also no worry about vampires killing them. If a vampire feeds from a Lycan, they will die. Lycans are much stronger than vampires when they're in their wolf form, so to keep them in line, all the Lycans wear these spiked collars. Then, if they were to transform, it would kill them. For a long time, this worked out for Viktor. He had a new immortal workforce that were also good daylight guardians. That was until his daughter started having a secret relationship with Lucian. The two were drawn to each other and had a secret relationship for quite a while. One day while outside the castle walls, Sonia is attacked by too many werewolves. Lucian is forced into action. He is a blacksmith and he secretly made a key for his collar. He unlocks it and turns into a Lycan to protect Sonia, and it works. For some reason, the wild werewolves respect Lucian and back down. He managed to save Sonia, but is punished severely and sentenced to spend the rest of his life in the dungeon. According to Viktor, this is him being lenient. If it were any other Lycan, he would have been executed immediately. Eventually, Viktor's right-hand man Tanis finds out about their relationship, but doesn't spill the beans. Instead, he wants Sonia's seat on the Vampire Council in return for his silence. This is just my own theory, but I think Tanis is actually secretly a good guy, and I'll explain why in a little bit. Viktor has now decided he's going to execute Lucian, so Sonia gets Tanis to help her see him one last time. She tells Lucian he needs to leave while the Death Dealers and Viktor sleeps. Later, Tanis returns to Lucian's cell and gives him a key to his collar.
Consider it a parting gift.
Lucian plans on escaping with the other Lycans and succeeds. They make a small camp and Lucian also tries to plead with a pack of werewolves for help, if that's even possible. Some want to leave, but Lucian says they cannot leave their Lycan brothers behind. Back at the castle, Viktor is growing suspicious of the relationship between Sonia and Lucian, and when he bites Sonia, her blood memories reveal the truth of the relationship. Now Sonia has been locked in her room. Lucian returns to the castle and tries to rescue Sonia, but the two are caught. Sonia tries to plead with her father and admits that she is pregnant with Lucian's baby, the first ever hybrid child, emerging of the bloodlines. Sonia seems to be excited by the idea, but Viktor is disgusted by it. He brings his daughter before the vampire council to be punished, and she is sentenced to death by sunlight. She is brought into a special chamber and tied up. Lucian is also chained up in the room so that he can watch her die. They are left in the room alone, and a hole in the roof opens, burning Sonia alive. We see while this is happening that Viktor is in his room crying. Although he seems heartless, that's not really the case. He did care for his daughter, just not as much as the Coven and his position in it. It can't be understated that this did have a huge effect on Viktor though, and he always felt guilty about this. Later, Viktor enters the room where his daughter was sentenced to death, and he takes the necklace from her neck. Lucian is chained up on the ground, but is enraged by the full moon. Even though he has silver in him, he's still able to transform into his wolf form, forcing the silver out of his flesh. He breaks his chains and slashes at Viktor, grabs Sonia's necklace and jumps out the window. He tries to escape but is pinned down by arrows. He lets out a massive roar on the castle wall and calls out to his Lycan brothers, and they heed the call. One of my favorite scenes in the movie, all the Lycans come running out of the forest, followed by dozens and dozens of werewolves. This proves to me that these werewolves, although mostly wild, still have some level of humanity trapped in there. The Lycans manage to drive the vampires from the castle, and Lucian defeats Viktor in one-on-one combat. He stabs Viktor through the head with a sword. However, he's not actually dead. At the end of the movie, we see that Viktor escapes, thanks to Andreas Tanis. They got away on a boat with the coffins of the other two elder vampires, Amelia and Marcus. After the events of Rise of the Lycans is when a lot of stuff happens off screen. When Lucian escaped, he took Sonia's necklace. To him, it was a keepsake that belonged to his love. He had no idea it was the key to William's cell. He probably didn't even know who William was. Now that Lucian had half of the key, this worried Viktor. As a precaution, he killed the man who built the prison and his family, since he was the only other person who knew the location. Except, he didn't kill the whole family. This man had a 19-year-old daughter named Celine. When Viktor seen her, he couldn't bring himself to kill her, because she reminded him too much of the daughter he sentenced to death. Even though it was extremely dangerous to keep her alive, Viktor turned her anyway. He went on to treat Celine like a daughter, giving her special privileges. This again shows that Viktor did care for his daughter. If he didn't, he wouldn't risk keeping Celine alive because she reminded him of his daughter. Viktor would lie to Celine and tell her that Lycans were responsible for killing her family. This is what made her become a highly skilled death dealer. She did it to avenge her family. Little did she know, Lycans had nothing to do with it. The Lycans continued to live in Castle Corvinus for a while, but the conflict with the vampires was ongoing. Lucian knew eventually the vampires would return, and they did. One day the vampire Craven arrives to take the castle back by force. But instead, him and Lucian made a deal. Lucian would cut the brand off his arm and let Craven take credit for his death. That way Lucian would be able to go into hiding with the other Lycans without worry of being hunted. Their full plan was that eventually Lucian would come out of hiding. They would kill the current vampire elders, then Craven and Lucian would make a peace treaty between the vampires and Lycans. Theoretically, not a bad idea. So Lucian went into hiding and Craven got the glory for killing him. For this, Viktor made Craven the regent of the Old World Coven. This is basically the next most powerful in the Coven behind Viktor and the Council. Viktor became much more powerful over the coming centuries, ruling over the Old World Coven with an iron fist. He would even go so far as to alter history. In Viktor's revised version of history, there is nothing about him sentencing his daughter to death. Nothing about him being the reason Lycans exist, being the reason the war started between vampires and Lycans, and maybe the strangest of all, the official vampire history states that Viktor is the first vampire, not Marcus. I wonder if he did this for his own ego or to protect Marcus, because he thought that if Marcus was killed, all vampires would die. My guess would be he did it for his ego. Remember when I said that Tanis was secretly a good guy? Well, this is another reason. Tanis witnessed what happened during Rise of the Lycans. When Viktor altered history, Tanis made an attempt to record what actually happened. He was then charged with recording malicious lies as the official Coven historian. Viktor sentenced him to be exiled in a monastery by none other than Celine. If you remember at the end of Rise of the Lycans, Tanis was the only other survivor, so if he's gone, no one will ever know the truth.
And then turning you. That was too much to take. My protests are why he put me here.
The next movie in the timeline is the first Underworld movie, which takes place in the early 2000s, about 600 years after the events of Rise of the Lycans. This makes Viktor roughly 1500 years old and Celine around 600 years old. We learn the vampires now own some kind of medical company called Ziodex Industries. They specialize in creating synthetic plasma and cloning blood. This is how they made their fortune and what they feed on. During this movie, Craven says that Viktor would never abide by his own rules. From time to time, he would gorge himself on human blood because he didn't like the taste of livestock. This implies it was a rule of the Coven that they are not allowed to consume human blood, only animal blood. This was likely to keep their species a secret. However, now they feed on cloned blood, which we see them drinking at least once during the movie. At this point, the wild werewolves that cannot take human form seem to have gone completely extinct, as we never hear anything about them again. Only Lycans. According to the vampires, Lycans are supposed to be almost extinct. A large den hasn't been seen in centuries. There's the odd one here or there, but they haven't regrouped in numbers. Little do they know, Lucian has been getting ready and finally decides it's time to enact his plan with Craven, and also has a new plan as well. Since his unborn hybrid child was killed, he has been trying to create a hybrid ever since. The species don't usually mix, the viruses even attacking each other at the cellular level. He eventually discovers that Michael Corvin's blood is the key to the hybrid. This is because he is a direct descendant of the original immortal Alexander Corvinus. For some reason, his bloodline is able to adapt the virus better than other people. Usually when a vampire bites a Lycan or vice versa, they die. But not for Michael. First, Celine finds out the Lycans are following Michael. This makes her suspicious. Then she finds a whole pack of Lycans in the subway tunnels. She reports this, but Craven is acting suspicious and not taking the threat seriously. He also won't let Celine go investigate for herself. I wonder why. Celine disobeys him and finds Michael and tries to interrogate him, but they are attacked by Lycans, and Michael is bitten by Lucian himself, and Celine sees the necklace. From what she finds in the vampire records, she's pretty sure it's Lucian, because they include a drawing of the amulet. Celine, feeling like she has no choice, breaks the chain for the first time since its inception and awakens Viktor a century early. Marcus was supposed to be awoken next, but Celine needs the help of Viktor. She warns Viktor through her memories that he is in great danger and the Lycans have returned. She also suspects Craven could have something to do with it. Viktor is quite weak when he wakes up and looks like a zombie or something. Viktor is furious that Celine has broken the chain. She tries to plead with him, but Viktor says she will have to be judged by the council. And if we've learned anything about the council, that's pretty much a death sentence, and Celine reacts as such. Michael is also captured by the Lycans and taken to their hideout. Eventually Viktor finds out that Celine is consorting with a Lycan, Michael. No doubt this would bring back memories of his daughter. It seems history is doomed to repeat itself. I find it interesting that the first movie frames Lucian as the villain for most of the movie, but we slowly discover that it's actually Viktor that's the villain. Celine manages to capture the Lycan scientist working for Lucian and brings him directly to Viktor to prove she was right. Even after Viktor basically sentenced her to death, she still kept fighting on his behalf to discover the truth. At the same time, Lucian is launching an attack on the vampire elder Amelia when she arrives for the awakening ceremony of Marcus. He needs her blood and Michael's blood in order to turn himself into a hybrid, or so he thinks anyway. Back at the Old World Coven, with Craven still in the room, the Lycan scientist reveals the original story of Alexander Corvinus. He was an immortal who had 3 sons, one bitten by bat, one bitten by wolf, another to walk the lonely road of mortality. Viktor dismisses this as a ridiculous legend. Years ago, I had no idea why Viktor said this. I thought maybe they made Viktor the first vampire, then later retconned it, but no. Like I said earlier, Viktor tried to alter history and state that he was the first vampire. The Lycan scientist said they discovered that they share a common ancestor. They are not 2 different species, but rather 2 mutations of the same one. He also states that they couldn't use Marcus's blood because they needed someone who hadn't been turned yet. He explains that if someone could inject Michael's blood, along with the blood of a vampire elder, like Viktor.
Abomination.
The Lycan says that Lucian plans to do this, and Viktor says, Lucian is dead. But the Lycan smiles and says, according to whom? That confirms to Viktor that Craven was in fact lying, because Craven reported that he killed Lucian. After the Lycan says this, they realize that Craven is now gone. A few moments later, the Death Dealers interrupt their interrogation to tell Viktor that Amelia and the Council have been killed. Worse yet, Amelia was drained of blood, meaning Lucian has everything he needs. The Lycan begins to laugh and says, "It's already begun." Viktor then punches him so hard his face splits wide open, showing us Viktor has his strength back, or at least most of it. Viktor then apologizes to Celine, saying, "I never should have doubted you," and promises that Craven will pay with his life. He then adds, "Absolution will be yours as soon as you kill Michael." So he wants Celine to basically prove she's loyal, and he'll probably make her the new regent of the Coven. Also, at first, Viktor was furious about how he was awoken 100 years early, but now he's probably thinking, thank God Celine woke me up or I'd probably be dead. When Craven snuck out of the room, he went straight to Lucian to inform him that Viktor is awake. Craven says, "How am I supposed to take over the Coven now that Viktor is awake? There's no defeating him, and he grows stronger as we speak." Lucian agrees and says that's why they need Michael. As they are talking, Viktor arrives with the Death Dealers. Before Lucian can leave, Craven shoots him in the back with the new silver nitrate bullets. These were developed by reverse engineering the UV rounds that the Lycans were using. He appears to be dead, but he's not. While the vampires are attacking the Lycan den, we get to see how strong Viktor is. Up until this point, the movie has went out of its way to show us that Lycans are much stronger than vampires when in their wolf form. The first vampire we see fight a Lycan gets wrecked, then so does Soren with the silver whips. These whips also appear in Underworld Awakening, along with Viktor's coat. Anyway, Lycans are stronger. That is, unless you're talking about the Elders. One of the strongest Lycans, named Raze, tries to fight Viktor. The Elder Vampire picks him up by his throat and snaps his neck like a twig with his bare hands. I guess Craven was right when he said now that Viktor's awake, there's no stopping him. Celine decides to go against Viktor and help Michael instead of killing him. She finds Michael in the Lycan den and tries to escape with him, but is stopped by Craven. He is jealous of Michael because he is also in love with Celine, so he shoots Michael. Not only did he shoot him, but it was with the silver nitrate bullets, and since he's a Lycan, these are fatal. Craven tries to justify his betrayal of Viktor by telling Celine the truth, that Viktor was the one that killed her family, not the Lycans. But he turned her because she reminded him too much of the daughter he sentenced to death. Celine is shocked hearing this, because all this has been removed from vampire history. She doesn't want to believe it, but part of her knows it's true. This is when we see that Lucian is still alive, crawling on the ground. He stabs Craven through the leg and tells Celine to bite Michael in order to save him. She does, and Michael is turned into the first hybrid. Lucian is killed by Craven, but ultimately he succeeded in his goal. He says, "You may have killed me, cousin, but my will is done regardless." A hybrid was created, a blending of the species. Also, he got to see Celine and Michael in love, and I'm sure this reminded him of himself and Sonia, giving him hope for the future of Lycans. Craven shoots Lucian and then gets away. That's when Viktor finally finds them. He throws Michael through a brick wall and he continues to change into the first hybrid in the other room. Viktor is angry and yells, "Where's Craven?" But Celine looks terrified and has a tear in her eye. Viktor realizes something is wrong, and Celine confronts him about what Craven said.
It was you.
Viktor admits that he did kill Celine's family, but he has given her so much more. Immortality. When Celine brings up his daughter, Viktor has to look away. He walks over to Lucian's body and sees the necklace. He finally takes it back and says, "I loved my daughter, but the abomination growing in her womb was a betrayal of me and of the Coven. I did what I had to do to protect the species, something I'm forced to do yet again." Celine begs him not to, but Michael appears behind Viktor and the fight begins. He pushes Viktor into the room, and before he can stand up, Michael is already looming over him, showing how fast the hybrid is. The fact that Michael is able to put up a fight against Viktor at all is extremely impressive. Viktor is the strongest vampire behind Marcus, and seems to be much stronger than even the strongest Lycans. Lucian agreed with Craven that Viktor was unbeatable. During the fight, Celine tries to interrupt them, and Viktor knocks her unconscious with a single punch. This makes what Michael is doing even more impressive. He's also only been a hybrid for about 5 minutes, so he has no idea what his abilities are or what he's capable of. Viktor has had 1500 years of combat experience. Viktor's fighting skill does prove to be too much for Michael. Just when it looks like Viktor is going to kill him, Celine is forced to make a hard decision. Protect the man she fell in love with, or the man that's been like a father to her for 600 years. I think after discovering that Viktor had lied to her and killed her family, the choice was much easier. She picks up Viktor's sword and jumps through the air, slicing his head in half. Like I said, if Craven didn't tell Celine the truth, it's possible she would have killed Michael, or let Viktor kill him. They find the necklace at the end of the movie, and due to Michael being turned by Lucian, he has seen the memories of Sonia being killed. They know how the war actually started, but they don't know what the necklace is for. Viktor is dead, and despite his best efforts, a hybrid was created and his reign over the Coven has come to an end. In the next film, Underworld Evolution, Marcus breaks out of his hibernation as a hybrid because Lycan blood dripped into his tomb. The Lycan that Viktor punched. So technically, it was Viktor's fault that Marcus was made into a hybrid. When he awakens, he immediately kills Craven's men and feeds on Craven. It looked like they were going to try and kill Marcus while he was still hibernating. Through Craven's blood memories, Marcus learns all of Craven's and Viktor's treachery. For this, he kills Craven and burns the Coven to the ground. Later, he confronts Celine, and Celine thinks that he's going to be angry about Viktor. But Marcus says he deserved his fate 1,000 times over, showing he probably hated Viktor the whole time, just more so after discovering everything that he had done. Marcus was asleep when the Lycans were created, so I'm guessing Viktor never told him that that was all his doing. Viktor does not appear again in the movies other than his dead body appearing in Evolution. It shows us the other half of the key to William's cell, grafted to his chest under his skin. In Evolution, we also learn that Tanis continued to help Lucian after he was exiled, and Lucian helped him. No doubt Lucian still had some favor for Tanis after he didn't rat out him and Sonia and gave Lucian the key to his spiked collar. Lucian never hated vampires. I mean, he fell in love with one. He just hated Viktor. In Evolution, we learn that Tanis was the one who developed the UV bullets that were being used by the Lycans as a kind of FU to Viktor. So in the end, I think Tanis was kind of a scumbag, but he was good at his core, which makes him an interesting character. No other vampire would have dared go against Viktor and help a Lycan escape. In the end, what killed Viktor wasn't his enemies, but the people closest to him.
You're in need of rest.
I've rested enough.
I've covered a lot of Underworld on this channel. Celine's full timeline, Viktor, Marcus, Tanis, all the species, but one thing I've always wanted to cover but never got around to was the third vampire elder, Amelia. She was unfortunately killed in the first movie, and I don't think she ever spoke a single word on screen. However, she was extremely important to the vampire world. Let's talk about the vampire elder Amelia, her secret son, and everything we know about her story.
We must move quickly before they turn.
It's not known exactly who she was before being turned, but presumably she was a great warrior, possibly a warlord like Viktor. So by the mid-6th century, all three elders have been established. When each elder is in power, they have control over all covens. However, it seems Marcus and Viktor preferred to reside in the Old World Coven. Amelia, on the other hand, would go on to found the Eastern Coven sometime in the 6th century. We know that's how old it is because in Blood Wars, a vampire says the Eastern Coven has held for 15 centuries. So this coven is pretty much the same age as the Old World Coven. Not long after, Amelia would go on to found the Nordic Coven, also known as Vardor. The Nordic Coven is unique compared to all other vampire covens because they don't answer to the Council. They're completely independent and don't take place in the vampire-Lycan war, well, until Celine and David showed up there. Some vampires in the Nordic Coven undergo a special ritual that takes them to a place they call the Sacred World. This grants them super speed and the ability to read another's aura. I wonder why Amelia never underwent this process. Or maybe she did. Roughly 800 years later after the formation of these covens, Marcus, Viktor, and Amelia are hunting down William. They discover an entire village that's been killed by the werewolves and they all begin to turn. It's a hard-fought battle, as werewolves are much stronger than vampires, but they win and capture William. Marcus was under the impression that their plan was to capture William and try to help him. Viktor has different plans though. As soon as William is captured, Viktor's orders are that William be imprisoned for all time. Amelia sides with Viktor, and Viktor has an entire army on his side, so Marcus has no choice but to agree. This would be the beginning of Viktor and Amelia undermining Marcus's rule as the first vampire. We see that when William was captured, all three elders were awake, but this wouldn't always be the case. At some point, the vampires would establish something they named the Chain. In order to avoid conflict, only one vampire elder would rule at a time. Meanwhile, the other two would hibernate. Each elder would rule for 100 years, then go back into hibernation. There has been some discrepancies in retconning with the timeline and hibernations, like I said, all three elders being awake when they caught William, but usually it is one elder ruling at a time. In the first movie, Amelia was the current ruling elder. The next to be awakened was Marcus, then Viktor. The way this rotation started was Viktor, Amelia, then Marcus. Each elder is awoken by the blood of the current ruling elder. This allows them to see everything the previous elder has done and any problems that have occurred. It's like downloading a quick summary of the past 100 years. Apparently, it takes a lot of skill to organize your memories properly for this ritual. In the first movie, Celine breaks the chain and awakens Viktor ahead of Marcus. Since she was inexperienced with organizing her memories, this causes Viktor to be overcome with rushes of unorganized and chaotic memories. It doesn't seem to be any danger to him, just annoying. The novelization of Underworld tells us two things about the hibernation process that we don't learn in the movie. The elders are actually hooked up to some kind of life support system in the coffins to feed them and keep them alive. In the movie, they look more like corpses that have just dried up, and there doesn't seem to be any life support system attached. In the book, it says they're able to enter this state of hibernation by fasting, aka not drinking blood for a long period of time. When an elder is awoken from their slumber, they're quite weak. It took Viktor at least a few days to get back to full strength.
Absolution will be yours.
There was multiple reasons the chain was established. In the book, it gives 3 specific reasons. First, to allow the elders to have their much needed rest. 2, to avoid conflicts while ruling. Each elder would be able to rule for 100 years however they seen fit. The third and possibly most important reason that the chain was used was to keep Marcus from ever freeing his brother William. I'm not exactly sure how the chain stopped Marcus from trying to free his brother. Possibly Viktor created the Vampire Council to limit Marcus's power, yet they would allow Viktor to do whatever he wanted. Also, if the chain did go Viktor, Amelia, then Marcus would never drink blood from Viktor. Therefore, he would never learn his true intentions. As far as I know, Viktor and Celine are the only people left alive that know the location of William's cell. So if Marcus was able to drink from Viktor, he might be able to find out where his brother's locked away. And Viktor doesn't want that. I guess the other way the chain could stop Marcus from finding his brother is he would only ever have 100 years at a time to do it. It's very likely that Amelia and Viktor would have just killed Marcus and William, if not for Marcus's genius plan. Marcus told Viktor that if he were to die, all in his bloodline would follow, which includes Viktor. Therefore, Viktor wanted to control Marcus, but also had to protect him. Anyway, you kinda get the picture that the 3 elders did not rule in perfect harmony. Viktor and Amelia were always conspiring against Marcus to keep him under control and keep him from freeing his brother. That's why in the second movie, Evolution, when Marcus burns down the coven, one of the soldiers says, "Why would he burn down his own coven?" And Marcus's father, Alexander, says, "It was never his coven." So even Alexander knew his son was being taken advantage of. It's possible at some point Viktor was planning to kill Amelia. In Rise of the Lycans, Viktor says multiple times to Sonia, "When you're elder." Not if, but when. We know that Viktor won't kill Marcus in fear of the vampire race dying, so that only leaves Amelia. Either that or Viktor might have been planning to add a 4th elder to the chain. Finally, the last coven that Amelia would found would be the New World Coven, located in New York. It is presumed this coven was founded after settlers started coming to America, so around the 16th century. That would make this coven 400 to 500 years old, by far the newest. A lot of vampire media like to refer to Europe as the Old World and America as the New World. The New World Coven in New York is the only coven that we haven't seen yet. At some point before the 20th century, Amelia and a vampire Thomas formed a secret romance together. There was secret passages in the Eastern Coven known only to Amelia and Thomas. They probably used these passages to keep the relationship a secret. Sometime later, during the 20th century, Amelia became pregnant with a pure-blood vampire. This is David. The pregnant Amelia and Thomas went to the Nordic Coven for several months until the child was born. This also lets us know that vampire pregnancies work the same as human pregnancies. The reason they went to the Nordic Coven was to keep the relationship, and especially the child, a secret. They must have known that David being an heir to an elder would make him a target. Eventually, Viktor was becoming suspicious about Amelia's whereabouts. He sent his sire, Samira, to the Nordic Coven to look for her. But by the time she arrived, Thomas had already taken their son back to the Eastern Coven, and no one would be the wiser. Thomas told everyone, including his own son, that his mother was a random lowborn vampire. So David would grow up having no idea who his mother was. Before leaving the Nordic Coven, Amelia put some of her blood in small vials. For David and the Council. This will come back later. The next time we would hear about or see Amelia would be in the first movie. She was residing in the New World Coven, but her time as ruler has come to an end, and Marcus is due to be awakened next in the chain. While on her way to the Old World Coven in Hungary, she is ambushed and killed by the Lycans. Lucian is planning to use Amelia's elder blood to try and transform himself into a hybrid. He thinks by combining elder vampire blood with Michael Corvin's blood, he can turn himself into a hybrid, which he never gets to try, so Amelia kind of died for nothing. We also never learned if that method would have actually worked. The two elders that were turned by Marcus are much stronger than normal vampires. It seems similar to other vampire series in that the further you get away from the progenitor, the weaker the vampires become. Celine was turned by Viktor, so she's only one removed from the first vampire. That could be why, even in the first film, her abilities were so impressive. Most vampires are no match for a Lycan when it comes to one-on-one combat. That is, unless you're talking about Viktor. He was able to easily kill one of the strongest and oldest of the Lycans, Rise, with his bare hands, and quite easily I might add. Also, the fact that Lucian wanted elder blood to try and turn himself into a hybrid is implying that elder blood has different properties. I think it can be assumed that Amelia would have been just as strong as Viktor. The only reason she was killed was because they were ambushed by too many Lycans. The continuation of Amelia's story doesn't happen until Blood Wars. Thomas dies while helping Celine and his son escape from the Eastern Coven after Celine was framed for killing the new Death Dealer recruits. Thomas told them to go to the Nordic Coven, and this is when David finally learns who he is. When David arrives, everyone in the Nordic Coven knows who he is. I mean, this is where he was born. He just doesn't know it. The leader of the Coven, Viktor, says that when David's mother passed, it was a great loss, and the Coven mourned for an entire month. This is when Celine realizes that that honor is only reserved for Coven leaders and elders. His mother is Amelia. This news is so insane that David doesn't even believe it, and it even makes him a bit angry.
She abandoned her only son for the sake of her precious counsel.
Viktor gives David the small vial of blood that his mother left for him, and he walks outside the castle. When David finally drinks the blood, this allows him to see her blood memories and everything that happened. After seeing the memories through his mother's eyes, he immediately understands what she did and why. David then goes back to the Eastern Coven, which at this point has been taken over by Samira. He enters the council and claims he's the rightful heir. If we look back, Amelia was killed by Lycans, and the other two elders were killed by Celine. That means currently there is no elders, which means the vampires basically have no leader. Thomas is the last living true heir of an elder, because Viktor killed his daughter and Marcus had no children. Of course, Samira doesn't believe David, but he brought the other vials of his mother's blood and gives them to the council. After drinking, they confirm that David's claim is true. He's the last of the purebloods. Samira assumes that all the vampires will still obey her, but upon learning that David is the son of Amelia and the true heir, they throw her in jail.
I said, kill him.
No.
At the end of the film, Celine, Lena, and David are officially made elders by completing a ceremony that involves drinking blood. They kept the 3 elder rule, I see. I doubt they will continue the hibernation thing though. You could argue that Amelia was the most successful vampire elder. She founded 3 covens, and her legacy now lives on. Without Amelia establishing the Nordic Coven, saving David, and leaving the blood behind, David would not have been able to take over the Eastern Coven, and it's very possible they might have lost the war to the Lycans. I mean, without the Nordic Coven, Celine wouldn't have had her super speed ability that she used to defeat Marius.
What of Amelia?
I hope you all enjoyed this video about all 3 vampire elders from Underworld. This is still one of my favorite series of all time, and I would like to make some more videos on it very soon because I have a couple topics that I've never got around to covering. If you would like that, please let me know in the comments down below, and also what you would like to see. As always, if there's any other movies, TV shows, or video games you want me to cover, leave those down in the comments below as well. If you enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe for new videos every week. As always, an extra shout out to all my members for supporting the channel. It means a lot. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.